Edward here from the infamous crypto viewing group. A quick shout out to my buddies, my pals here, my teammates, Dick Olgard, Daz Smith. We are the remote viewers for the crypto viewing group. We work under blind conditions. We put out stuff all the time, constantly putting out stuff every week. Cryptocurrency stuff, woo-woo stuff, future events, all kinds of cool stuff. It's just never ending. Hey, there's one from me. There's one from Dick. There's one from Daz. There's so much great stuff on there. It's very important stuff, very timely. We do some woo-woo stuff, but the majority of the stuff that we do is very timely, very important work for what we're the monetary system and the changing systems that we're moving into. Those are the focuses that we have. Those are the things that we're looking at constantly. Every week we're putting out new projects that we're looking at. Okay, that's my plug for my friends here. I just did an interview with fellow crypto viewer, our announcer Dennis Nappy II, on his website, or for his Seiker podcast. He has his own podcast, and we did an interview. He interviewed me about the Vimana project that I just completed. This is a project that I just completed with Dustin Newcombe. Well, I completed it, not just completed it. I completed it like a month ago or something like that. This was a target that Dustin had selected for me. A very extensive project. It was a great project. I really enjoyed it. Again, these are my vacation targets where I can get lost for a while in a target and just delve deeply into it and allow certain things to saturate my mind and my perceptual realms with very interesting experiences. This is Dustin's website. Check it out. I'll have the link below. Tarot Space Design, and this is for Dustin's site. Really cool stuff to check out. He's an artist, deep thinker, and an all-around great guy. Damn good friend of mine. Just a great friend, and he sets these up for me. So we work really well together, and I just appreciate him. And so that's his site. And again, Dennis Nappy, we just did a great interview. This is his book. I have the book. He sent me a signed copy. Awesome book of that he just put out. I Am Human, Food for the Archons. It tells his story of experiences that he's gone through on his journey, and it's just fantastic. So check that out. All these plugs here for my friends. I got my guys here at the Crypto Viewing Group, Dennis Nappy and Dustin Newcombe. Check us all out. And this is my interview with Dennis Nappy talking about my sessions for the Vimana. So enjoy, and many more to come.
One of my goals with the Seiker podcast is to make the supernatural more natural and the paranormal more normal. These are events and occurrences that happen as a part of our natural and normal everyday lives. We've just been conditioned to ignore them and deny their existence. Well, it's time to undo that conditioning. I'm proud to announce that Ray Davis and I of Sixth Sense Media have created our own Sixth Sense Media clothing line. We can't always go up to somebody and say, hey, what do you think about disclosure and UFOs and aliens on the Earth? But you can wear one of our Disclosure Now t-shirts and get people's attention, start the conversation, or connect with another like-minded person who sees your shirt. If you're a truth seeker, or someone looking to enact positive change in the world, why not wear it with pride? Connect with other like-minded truth seekers and become the change you want to be and see in this world. Visit sixthsensemedia.net, click on the store tab, and become the change you were born to inspire. Visit sixthsensemedia.net, click on the store.
Welcome to Truth Seekers. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong in the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Flying palaces, benevolent races from other civilizations coming to seed the intelligence of mankind. That's what we're going to get into on this week's episode of the Seiker podcast. Hello, Truth Seekers. Dennis Nappy II here with Sixth Sense Media. This week, I have my friend and guest, Edward Reardon, coming on the line to talk about a recent target he once looked at, a Vimana, coming from the Indian text, the Mahabharata. And the Vimanas were said to be flying palaces. What were inside the Vimanas? Who was operating them? Where did they come from? And what influence did they have on humanity? A fascinating conversation I have with Edward this evening. And it's always one of inspiration and one of hope. And a breakthrough moment for me as well. He said some things that really pieced together some things in my journey, some similarities to some things that I've been through. I couldn't help but to make that connection as I spoke with him. So I'm excited to share this with you. Edward is a very talented individual when it comes to remote viewing. And the way he presents information, I always walk away feeling hopeful and feeling refreshed and feeling grounded. And I think that's part of his gift of who he is as a remote viewer and just as a human being. And I'm thankful to share my conversations with Edward with all of you out there as well. And I have to say, if you listened to the show last week, my last couple of shows, they've been heavy. There's a lot of changes going on in the world, and I think it's important to share the perspectives I have and the insight I have into those changes and what's happening. But I think it's equally as important to remember what else is out there, what's at stake here, who we are, what potential we have, the beauty we have, and what we're capable of doing. It's easy to get fixated on and focus on the scary things and the negative things and the unknown things and the changes. And it's just so heavy. And after talking with Edward, I feel refreshed. And I hope that you take the same away from this discussion that I had with Edward. And I hope you go out and you find your own sources as well to on the regular. In addition to consuming some scary stuff, find some things that are positive. And I think this shows an example of it. And there will be more. I'm going to start pulling guests back on the show as well, beyond just the. And I'm going to still keep pushing the analysis and everything else I've been talking about, but I will have more guests coming on as well in the near future because it's a good reminder of the value of that. You know, Edward, when he does these types of sessions on his own channel, you can find his YouTube channel. Just look up Edward Reardon, and I'll have the links in the show notes. But when he does these sessions, he says, "This is my vacation." He does these targets to get away. Because we're doing so much with the crypto viewing team, and he likes the change of pace and the change of what he's doing. But we also did express on the show, don't forget, the value in what's coming out of the crypto viewing team. And if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to check it out. And Edward and I talk about it at the end of this show on why it's valuable and why it's important. We need to understand these changes that are happening. And remote viewing is a very important piece of that, and what we're targeting, what we're looking at on the crypto viewing team. These guys are the best of the best in the civilian sector of what we've got. And we're very fortunate to hear their insights every week. So if you haven't done so already, cryptoviewing.com or patreon.com/cryptoviewing. Edward said it tonight. He said it best. He says, not only is there more to come, we're just getting started. The best is yet to come because this team is amazing with what they're doing. So please, I encourage you to check it out. Cryptoviewing.com, patreon.com/cryptoviewing. Edward Reardon, Daz Smith, Dick Allgaier, every week they're putting out more and more data on this change to the economy and its impact on infrastructure, on government, on politics, on nations, nation states, populations, everything. So, okay, enough plugs here. We're going to get into Edward's session. I got to give a shameless plug here. If you haven't done so already, please, if you want to support my platform, what I'm doing here, I Am Human Food for the Archons. You can find it at sixthsensemedia.net or at amazon.com. Humanity's Psychic Connection, Simulated Realities, Parallel Worlds, and the Manipulation of Mankind. That's my recent book. Check it out, my friends. All right, I'm going to go right to Edward because we talked for quite some time, and what a fascinating conversation we have. So, without further ado, enjoy. Right now, I have a man on the line who has been to the Earth's core. He's taken a look at QAnon and the advancements in nanotechnology and artificial intelligence, and he's encountered a higher consciousness by looking at pi through the technique of remote viewing. My good friend and teammate Edward Reardon of the Crypto Viewing Team and ER Viewer on YouTube is here with me once again to share his latest target, or one of his latest targets, where he was tasked to look at Vimanas, the ancient Indian from the ancient Vedic texts, looking at these flying craft and otherworldly intelligences. Edward's going to share some of his data this evening as we go down that rabbit hole. Edward, my friend, how are you tonight, sir?
Hey, Dennis, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on your awesome show.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I love having you on. I say every show that we do together, it leaves me with just hours of things to ponder. I think our conversations certainly change me in multiple ways. It's such an education. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
You know, I'm always thankful for just how we connected. It just was so random to me. And I think I say this every time you're on the air, but you're a random YouTube guy that I came across. I was like, oh man, this is interesting. And I sent you an email and you responded, and the rest is history, man. And I'm so thankful for that every time. You know.
Well, I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad we did that first show.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good stuff has come from it, certainly. So let's talk about Vimanas. You were tasked to remote view Vimanas. Can you explain a little bit, before we get into your data, what Vimanas are based on the research you've done since then?
Well, the Vimanas come from the ancient Indian Sanskrit epic, the Mahabharata. Mm-hmm. And inside of that is, from my understanding, a series of books, the ancient history books there, what is it, the Bhagavad Gita? Mm-hmm. I'm probably butchering the word.
I won't do much better.
In there.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that book, there's a story of some of these ancient kings and god figures fighting it out, and doing it in these flying machines, and they call them the Vimana. Mm. And so that is what I was asked to look at. Per the tasking, it was there was an ancient king in that book, King Swara or Svara. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It may be interchangeable with that V and that W. Mm-hmm. And the tasking was to look at his craft, his Vimana. But in the story, he's fighting Krishna, who is also in his own Vimana. So they're kind of duking it out in this story, where they're flying around in these machines, and they're battling and blowing up cities, just doing all this kind of crazy stuff. But that's what the task was, to look at that, the area, per the tasking, the subtaskings, mm-hmm. were to look at the area per the storyline. Any areas where there may still be evidence of one of these machines. Several geological subtasks were in there, along with the story. And I had, prior to getting the feedback, I had heard of the Vimana, but not really too interested in it. Just not my kind of, not something that I would really want to dive into. But I had heard about them, so it was really interesting to get the feedback, find out what it was, and then go back to the high points of this session. There's a lot of. I did 8 or 9 sessions on this.
Mm-hmm.
So there were several high points. Just areas in those sessions where I was like, oh, this is this is great. This is really, it's inside of me,
Yeah.
and where I was just like, wow, this is really something here. So it was cool to go back, to learn some about the history, and then to go and look at the sessions and see stuff in there. I said it before. Remote viewing is how I learn. It's my my history book process. And so I got to go and learn quite a bit of history on this one.
Yeah.
That I had not known before.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I didn't have an interest, but if I'm looking at something in my everyday awareness, it's it'll go right past me because the part of my mind that is connected with curiosity and all those things may be doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm in that space and everything is turned on, then I'm going into what I'm following my curiosity. And with a target like this is a giant target. It's a gigantic tasking.
Yeah.
And it's just like a minefield of really, really fascinating ideas. And it was really mentally stimulating.
Yeah, it sounds like it was, and just looking at the time span of this, I mean, this was definitely BC, right? This was before like a long prehistory, basically. We're talking a couple thousand years ago, and they're giving stories of flying craft that are destroying cities. Now, this was supposedly primitive people who were coming up with this. Now, I understand maybe you could say, oh, they were just being creative. Like we have things like Star Trek and stuff that we're creating and superheroes that we'll say, quote unquote, for all intents and purposes, don't exist, but although they probably do. But anyway, we can use our imagination and picture that stuff. But for people that we're viewing as primitive, to come up with the concept of a flying craft when they don't even have really vehicles or any type of real technology back then, that's a pretty advanced thought to be having. I think, we can make the argument maybe they were actually witnessing something after this data comes back. I mean, is that what it sounds like to you?
Well, what I will say is that after getting the feedback on this one and what I experienced, I felt that there was, I felt a lot of validity to the stories.
Mm-hmm.
If what I was experiencing through those sessions was if real remote viewing was taking place in some of the parts of those sessions, then there's validity in my mind to the stories, and to go back. You're talking. I believe it's several thousand years BC.
Yeah.
To be coming up with stories about flying machines, those are very advanced ideas to have in a culture that is a little bit beyond Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
Their temples everything is stone. So Yeah, those are really high end ideas. So, like I say, I can't say anything. That's for sure. But what I feel is that there's validity not only to the Vimana idea, but also to a character known as Krishna.
Right.
A character that I had never had any interest in.
Right.
Just not my part of the globe.
Yeah.
Of concepts that I was ever had any interest in. But afterwards, getting the feedback, I was like, wow, man, I really am interested in whoever this was, because there were some of the high points of the whole experience was tuning into an individual who post feedback. I feel was that character.
It's amazing how things that we maybe ignore for so long, somehow we come into contact with them and we're like, wow, this really fits with so much, and it makes sense, and now you have this strong interest in it. I have a friend of mine, Ray Davis. He's on the show regularly. He's my partner with Sixth Sense Media. And anytime I talk to him about stuff that I'm dealing with, he starts quoting some texts from Buddhism. And it's like word for word the thoughts that were in my head. And I always, at the end of that, I'm always like, man, I need to study Buddhism a little bit more, because it really explains some of the things that I'm experiencing or feeling. And then, of course, life gets busy and I don't study it. So then I talk to Ray again and he throws me some more information. But it's that part of the world, man, they had some insights. So let's get into some of this session. So let's start with the obvious, and then we'll dissect it from there. But can you describe this craft that you were targeted to look at? What were you seeing with it? What was it?
Well, the craft, if I can remember properly, it came from the individual that I was obsessing about in the session, and then there they were. Coming in on this craft. They were in some type of machine or something like that they were traveling in. Well, let me wait a minute. I'm starting to remember now, because this is how it came in. Sorry, man. I have to try to remember all this stuff. Because what I was going through was that this individual, who literally I was obsessing about this individual, and how different they were. Everything about this individual was just different than anyone else around them, and they felt that they had different DNA. It felt like they were like an alien DNA.
So they were on Earth and they were having these feelings, though.
They were that individual was on Earth, and they were different than everyone else.
Okay.
And they had they had come from somewhere else.
Okay, knowingly.
And so, yes.
Okay.
And then the part of, as I was going through that part of it, that this was like an off-worlder. The questions were coming into my mind of, how did they get here? What are they doing here? If they came here from somewhere else, what was that like? How did that happen? What was the process that they went through? And then there was the craft. I think what happened, if memory serves, I went right into another session. I had gone through a session with a bunch of things on the individual, took a break, came back into another movement, and blammo, I was right into the craft. What we could now say was a Vimana. and very large and prominent, and just kind of right there, you know.
When you say large, I mean, can you compare it, like the size of a modern day jetliner, or are we talking something much bigger? So I think they say about the size of cities, right?
I think in their descriptions of them, they would describe them as flying cities.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be an indicator of the size scope that they were trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
So in my session, scale wise, I'm not sure. Probably, hard to say. Maybe the size of a 2-story or house or a 3-story house.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Which is still pretty big.
Some people in there. Yeah. And do their thing. And, go where they need to go and do their thing.
So it's these big house-sized crafts flying around with an off-worlder. And were you witnessing any of these battles that they were having?
There were elements that came in the sessions that centered or suggested warlike activity.
Mm.
But those ideas were coming from something.
Mm.
And they were, as I was going through the session, what was happening in my mind was that as a result of bad thinking or not following directions or something along those lines, there could be warlike effects, those types of things. But the ideas of war in my mind as I was going through these were more like, this will happen if you don't follow these proper instructions. And those were the ideas that I was going through. So as I was going through these ideas, war and that stuff is not interesting to me.
Right.
I'm going to follow my curiosity.
Yeah.
So if I'm at a crossroads and to my right is war and war stuff, and to my left is the instruction manual idea and those really high level ideas, I'm going left.
Yeah.
Because that's way more interesting to me.
So let me interrupt real quick if I can, a clarifying question. You said basically if they have certain ideas or if they don't follow instructions, that was going to bring about war. Was that meaning kind of like somebody was a heretic or heresy, like going against like modern day what the government says? Or is this something that was more of an internal thoughts and self-talk, like a psychic type of reading here?
It was along the lines of like an instruction manual was provided. It came through in that idea of the grant, that these people were granted something.
Mm.
And if in the best case scenario, things like war and that type of stuff would most likely not happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like war as a worst case scenario, or war as a failure
mm-hmm.
of the people,
So these people. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Edward. I got so many questions now. Go ahead.
That's what I was trying to convey. That the war element came in, but I didn't give it too much my interest,
right?
Because of what it meant to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it didn't have your curiosity the way the other aspects of the target might have.
No, basically, what it meant to me was, this is what happens if you fail.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was the ultimate consequence.
A negative consequence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And at the same time, what was filling my mind was, okay, well, where are these consequences coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the consequence provider here?
Right.
And that was something that was perceivable very heavily to me. And so that was what I was drawn to.
And before we jump into that, just to clarify, then you said somebody was granted something, and that was, and we'll definitely get into that as well. But who is the person or people that were granted something? Was this an Earth-based civilization that was granted something, and then given the condition, hey, if you don't follow this, you could have war for a negative consequence, or is that what we're looking at here?
Along those lines, yeah.
Okay.
I had the distinct feeling it was a primitive culture that was being that had been noticed by a more advanced culture, and potential had been observed in the quote unquote primitive culture, and as a result of what was recognized, and the idea of a granting came into my mind for the quote unquote more primitive people, like a gift, handed to them based on the recognized potential in them, and so that's what I was going through. And so, when I'm in that frame of mind, fighting in war is like, is failure. It's like, that's what happens when you don't follow the directions or something like that.
Right.
It's like, this doesn't need to happen, why choose that,
Right, just follow the direction. Now, so we have this primitive culture, most likely human, on Earth. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so. Yeah.
So we have a primitive human culture,
and based on the targets and the tasking,
right?
It is the people of India. So
okay. The ancient people of India. And then they were noticed by an off-world intelligence or civilization. What did they notice about, what potential did they see in this ancient human civilization?
That was one of the high points of the whole experience, was the this feeling. It was like, from my perspective, it was like watching these two energy fields, with one of them observing the other and recognizing something in that, a growth potential or an untapped potential, and wanting to influence that, wanting to see it realize itself. And from my perspective, I was a third party. I was watching this, and it was fascinating to have that going on inside of my mind.
Do you know what they? Did you get what they saw in that potential? Potential for what?
Potential for greatness, growth, I had later in one of the later sessions, like a dormant code, and that was when I was going through the feedback that I think I may have referred to it something as like a dormant gene or a dormant code. Maybe that was what had been seen. Maybe it was something genetic. And it depends on what mind I want to look at it from, or what side of my brain I want to look at it from.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a scientific point of view, then maybe there was something genetic that was found, and that genetic configuration was recognized for its potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you alter it or add to it or whatever, there's a real fusion that takes place. So on the scientific side of my brain, that's what I was experiencing. On another part of my brain, it would be these primitive minds or these primitive brains are they can run a lot faster than what they're running at.
Mm-hmm.
We can hit the gas, man. There's the creative potential is great, and it just needs to be kind of opened up or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And then when you open it up, then all of this potential then begins to sprout in all of these different areas. So it just depends on what side of my brain I want to try to describe what I was feeling and experiencing. Mm-hmm. Or it's somewhere in the middle of both of those.
Both certainly make sense, and they may be describing the same thing. Especially you use the term code, and that kind of gets into my own realm. Thought I was getting off from that this weekend, having this conversation, but here we go again. Code, it brings it into some kind of programming, and begs to question at our core, what are we and what is this universe? And I'm not going to go down that tangent because I want to focus on your data, but my listeners know where I'm always going into the matrix, and I picked up on that term there. But
sure.
Let's talk about this advanced civilization. Who were they? Where did they come from?
Well, that was another one of the highlights, the high points of the experience. Once I began to obsessively perceive a unique individual who was amongst these other people that were not like the individual, mm-hmm. I became curious as to where did this individual come from, and I felt myself going to a different place where the individual was around others that were like himself. Mm-hmm. And then what were these individuals like? How did they live? And that kind of thing. And the interesting thing was, like, in that space, there was none of this war talk, right, or fighting, or none of that stuff. I didn't perceive anything like that there. It was a high thinking technological civilization, but low scale in the sense of how they live, not extravagant. Mm-hmm. Kind of a contrast to Earth, because like on Earth it's palaces and all of this grandeur and posturing and costumes and everything. and there it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more like a mature or kind of a quote unquote adult feel over there. And it was interesting because there were several moments in the sessions where I was feeling there was communication going between the individual on Earth and from the other, call it the home planet or whatever. And it was like the individual on Earth was like complaining or something.
Really?
Like, it was like a bitch session or something like that.
What was he complaining about?
And probably like, what's wrong with these people? I don't know. There's something like that. I don't know.
Right.
But I didn't get the details. What I got was the intention.
Right.
And it was like, it was kind of like a bitch session, like some complaints or some complaining or going on or something like that, or maybe venting or who knows, something like that. But it was interesting. That it would like the whole thing about the idea of this individual going from, we'll call it for lack of a better term, a home planet, and coming to Earth planet. That idea stimulated my curiosity. I wanted to go into that and what was going on there, and my perception of that was an extremely difficult process, a very dangerous process that the individual went through in order to get here. Even kind of it was like a life or death thing. It wasn't like, hey, let's just go on over to Earth and make it all cool. It was like an experiment or a dangerous journey, a dangerous process that was kind of a life or death thing, and kind of like a one-way ticket, And that was really interesting. That was a really interesting part of the whole thing. Another one of the high points was just that notion itself.
Right.
That there was concern that the individual there was no guarantee of success. It could have failed.
Right.
And that would have been it.
So this seems like
that was really interesting.
Like a benevolent culture then that was here really to benefit the civilization that was on the planet at the time.
It felt that way to me.
Very selfless.
Yeah, it felt that way to me, and the idea of and it really came through in the wording, a word that I don't typically use, which is the grant or the granting. That was a word that came through that in remote viewing we would take that into what's called stage 5.
Right.
And we would interrogate that word,
Right.
Shine the spotlight in its face, and who are you? Where did you come from? How did what processes were going on in my brain that spit out the word grant or granting, and again it went to this notion that there was, I don't want to say worthiness, that sounds very elitist, or even degrading to the people who received it. So I want to stay clear of a word like that, because it would diminish what was recognized in these people as this untapped greatness that needed a zap.
Right.
It just needed a zap, and
so what
to turn on that greatness.
What was it that was granted or given?
Well, I did my best to search to what that meant, and a lot of different interesting things were coming through that did have to do with genetic things, that had to do with things that I would quote unquote term initiation type of activities, that individuals who were of the right makeup or whatever would go through a type of initiation, and not a very pleasant one, in order to activate that. But once that happens, then what I was perceiving was like, then you have a section of the population then that is spreading those genes on to other people. They're creating the people. They're creating new people.
So they were
procreating.
They were granting them an experience. Then they weren't actually, or were they actually altering their DNA?
Well, my sense, I did have the sense in one of the sessions of an alteration.
Okay.
Is it an alteration in the DNA? I had that idea.
Okay.
So that idea was there. But I can't say for sure.
Right. That
idea did come through. Is it something electromagnetic? Is it something, just some, is it a part of the DNA that requires a certain frequency in order to be activated? Right. I think I had something like that in there too, but that was a very interesting part of the series as well, of the experience as well, because as of course I wanted to explore that. That kind of thing was too fascinating to not want to go closer to.
Right.
And what I was experiencing from that was that it was not a pleasant experience. It was not, it was painful. It was, you may not make it through it. It could kill you. If whatever, for whatever reason. So it was not for everybody. But those who could handle it, then could spread it out.
Right. So, but we don't know more about what it was. Just that it had these risks involved with that transition, with that change.
Yeah, it was like I do remember I was getting these strong notions of you're just getting zapped with something, quote unquote.
Right.
And it's like you're getting electrocuted or something like that. And you're getting there's a data transfer happening. There's history being downloaded. There's, something's getting plugged in, or someone is getting plugged in, and the process being, extreme, very extreme.
I need to go on a tangent for a minute, because as you're saying this, I'm having a memory. I wrote about it in my book, and I promise I'm not giving a shameless plug here, but it's relevant. I had a very significant experience years ago when I started encountering things in my room when I'd be sleeping or whatever. And one day I'm laying on my couch watching TV, and I dozed halfway off to sleep. My eyes were closed, but I can still hear the TV. And then all of a sudden, I felt like somebody walking behind me in my house. And I'm in my home. I'm alone in my home. And I hear this real obnoxious, high-pitched singing. Just casual singing. It was nothing, just this real weird singing. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in my house by myself, but all of a sudden I find I can't move. But I was conscious enough to say, well, I can still hear the TV. I've been through this process before. Okay, what's next? And this thing came up to me, and it had a long wand in its hand, or a rod or a staff, and it touched me on the head and surged electricity through my body. Like it hurt. It was painful, very painful. And then I, at least from my recollection, I fought my way through it valiantly, and the experience ended, and I jumped up, and everything was back to normal. But when you were saying that painful electrocution, just kind of triggered that experience it brought me right back there, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's along the lines of what I was experiencing, like that.
Yeah, it hurt, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been tased, and it felt something like that. It was bad.
Yeah. And it's like you have the pain, the physical pain, and then there's the emotional anguish and peeling back the eyelids kind of agony as well. It's like when you're having your mind peeled back and you suddenly see everything, including the things that you never wanted to see.
Yep, you nailed it. Absolutely.
Then that's then there's that's the part that can kill. It's like okay, I'll take the electricity. I'll take the zap. I'll take the jolts. But then when you then it's like, okay, I'm gonna peel back the layer of innocence, and you're gonna see all things, and it's like the screaming, and the agony,
No, I'm reliving it, man. I know exactly what you're talking about. Word for word, It's been part of my journey over the years. So I mean, you did it again, Edward. You really got me. Oh my gosh, that hit me hard. Listen to that. Whew. Almost got emotional on that. Wow, it's just a lot's fun. And it's like my brain's restructuring now at hearing you explain it. I'll have to process that later. We can talk about it another day, but oh my gosh. Let's get back to your data so we don't focus on my little journey here. So they come in and they give, the people that were willing and able of handling this transition, and they grant them this. Now you talked about something about people who can hold the frequency. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk any more on that? What that significance is?
Right along the lines of what we're saying, if for those who, as far in that session, what I was trying to describe were those who could handle that. They were changed. And of course, they're going to influence their environment. They're going to influence it by their presence. They're going to influence it by sharing their gene pool. There'll be stories written about them or whatever. And they'll share things. They will inspire people. And inspire creativity or just inspire.
Right.
Yeah. You activating people by triggering their inspiration. And so, that kind of thing, as well as, like I say, sharing the gene pool, spreading that out,
I mean, this almost sounds like a similar version to the Anunnaki coming in and altering, DNA of the civilization that was here, or, going out on a limb a little bit. Terence McKenna, his theory of basically the high ape. The ape was out in the woods and it found some magic mushrooms and it ate them and it altered its consciousness and gave it a new perspective on life to grow and evolve. And those that had taken the mushrooms then said, "Oh, we get ideas when we eat this," and that kind of spurred evolution. It's a really neat theory. I'm not sure if you looked at Terence McKenna's work, but he talks
a little bit, not too much, but I think I have heard of the ape thing.
Yeah.
Stimulating them with firing up their brains, you're suddenly a whole another range of the brain is active and suddenly having all kinds of new thoughts.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He a friend of mine sent me a quote of his, one of my listeners. Shout out to Trevor, thank you. A while back, talking about it was Terence McKenna's transcription of the mushroom intelligence, and basically the mushroom was saying, "I travel the universe, and all I ask is that you bring me with you when you leave the planet and spread my spores, and in exchange I will give you knowledge of every mind that I've encountered." So it was a really neat depiction of that, but it sounds similar to what's being granted here, and there's other accounts of it as well. Robert Morning Sky talks about it.
I'll say I agree with Terence on that. With the spores, I agree with him on that.
I think it's a pretty strong theory that he puts out there, if theory is the right word for it, because mushroom spores, from what I understand, can survive in space. So they could theoretically hop on a meteor, not they would hop on it, but be a part of some object that's traveling through space and crash into a planet, and then there you go, and now you have a way to spread information. I won't go down.
In my opinion, this is we don't want to go too far down this one, but in my opinion, this is their world, and they let us inhabit it. But that's for a show for another. Topic for another show.
And let's put that one on the calendar, because I'd love to go down that. So stay tuned, to be continued. Another journey down the rabbit hole. But back to here. So they've imparted this wisdom or this knowledge or this change in mankind because they saw the potential for growth in them. And then what? Once they did that, what happened?
I think that might have been the end of the sessions.
Okay.
Unless you, I think that might have been the end of the sessions. I think I may have ended
on your last
at that.
On your last page, and I know it. Let me look through. I texted it to you. That's how I can find it, because it'd be quicker to go through my text messages. Here it is. Oh yeah, I've got some data here. I can't read your handwriting. Oh, here we go. Develop science, right and wrong, the law. It's in the book. Read it.
Yeah.
And then you wrote. Yeah. And then you kept going on. Ancient code within, sleeping code. Some individuals, they are different ones. Chosen ones, the magnificent. The bringers of a new dawn. A fountainhead. And this is where I got, what I was blowing you up, because the book, Bringers of the Dawn, Teachers from the Pleiadians by Barbara Messiniak. Yeah. I mean, you nailed the title that you said in the book, and then you wrote flat out, The Bringers of a New Dawn. And this is a channeled book, which is a much different process than remote viewing. But the fact that you, in my opinion, said that, and then there's this book, and it's talking about the Pleiadians who brought a frequency here to people to bring about some kind of change, I think is highly relevant to what you're talking about here.
Well, maybe these people were, maybe these were the Palladians. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to have to read the book again, so I will do a follow-up show once I go through this book again, because I haven't had time. I've got like 30 books on my list right now, but I got to go through this one again, and then I'll be able to give you more feedback if that's something that's relevant. But if any of our listeners out there have read that book, and I'm sure some of you had, let us know if it relates to Edward's data, because it's been so long since I've read it.
After that Dawn statement, the Fountainhead statement came in, and that's like and I'm just writing it down.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means,
right?
But I looked up Fountainhead. And by definition, it means the origin of something. And I just thought that was just the greatest definition.
Yeah.
And then it was one of those things like Infinity from the QAnon.
Yeah.
It's like, where did that come from, man? Yeah. But wow, does it make sense? And that's just really, those are cool. Yeah, that when you were reading those things, well, I was deep into it there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was deep into it there.
Was there or maybe this was a different session, but was there talk of a negative influence trying to come in at some point with these sessions?
Not that I can recall. Not that I can recall. There may have been. I don't remember.
That might have been your Pi data. I think you saw there was some Archon stuff with Pi. They tend to run together sometimes. But I just want to make sure, because I thought there was something negative. But so overall, well, let me ask you this: what happened? What happened to the bringers of this gift from the other world? Where did they go?
That was it.
Yeah,
the session was over.
So it's
or the whole thing was over. And after that came through, and it was some kind of a book thing, and we just shut up and read the book. kind of a feel came over me.
Yeah.
And then that was it. I was done. And I felt satisfied. I was done.
Right.
Well, whatever I needed to do, I had done it.
And that makes sense, because the tasking was not where are they modern day or what happened afterwards. It wasn't part of your parameters.
Yeah. Well, that would be obviously I can't self-task.
Right.
But that would be a great target.
Yeah.
A great tasking to follow that. From that session of like the guy getting zapped by the bolts of electricity or whatever.
And,
where did what evolved from that, or follow the timeline 2,000 years or whatever,
I think that's a great point.
What's going on?
And I think there's some other relevant things. You know what? I'm not even going to say, because if the tasking comes up, I don't want to front load you with where my thoughts are on this, but some things that are relevant to today. So if your tasker decides to retask and wants to get those questions from me, then we can.
Well, I will say, like, how does it relate today? Humans. We talked about this before. I think on the last show. We have. We're plugged into universal genius. And it's just it's there, and it's pouring out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see right now because an illusion is being pulled over our eyes to see us as bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're being made to feel bad. But that's just that's like you know, don't look at the guy behind the curtain, just focus on the big green face on the screen.
Right.
You know, that's the big green face on the screen, because of the truth of it. The truth to me, and especially with at this session, is that we are constantly pouring out creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Just brilliant things are coming out of people. We just don't. It's unfortunately, it's not the top news story.
Yeah.
You know, the top news story is the bad things somebody did.
Mm-hmm.
And it reinforces like this illusion of self-hatred.
Exactly.
And that's like a small percentage, you know, but it's so big and shiny and loud. It's like everyone's staring at it, you know. It's, you know, Bruce Lee's quote, you know, it's a finger pointing away at the moon. Don't focus on the finger or you'll miss all the heavenly glory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. You know, the illusion is that they have us focused on how horrible they want us to believe that we are.
Yeah.
But man, there are people there's brilliance and genius and just unbelievable things that are pouring out of people. Creative things, comprehensions, you know, quantum physics, and just like, it's just, you know, now more than ever, in my opinion, you know.
Yeah.
I want that narrative to be put out there, because it needs to be put out there, you know. A small percentage gets all the attention, while the mass percentage doesn't get the attention it deserves.
Right.
You know?
And that perception of the negative is what drives a lot of people's reality. This is how it is, and well, I might as well just deal with it. And I want to give a related story to that. A friend of mine, Joe Scorsone, he's a musician. I had him on the show a while ago. His band is Flint Face. And, you know, he listens to the show. He's into, you know, well versed in all of the stuff that we talk about, and he's an advocate for change. And what he's doing right now, his wife, and his 2 young children, they got an old RV that was not really running, and he spent the whole summer fixing it up, getting it running, and moved his family into it. And now he's on, I think, 300 school tour over the next 8 months. They're traveling across the U.S., and they go and they bring music to children in different schools and bring a message of hope and positivity, and you know, everything's okay, and just spreading a positive image. I was just talking to him the other day through YouTube or whatever. I'm just so taken by, there's a lot of people that get on, and I guess I fall into this category, man. I try to put my money where my mouth is, and they talk it and they put it out there, but he goes out and he does it, and he's working every day with different kids, and he's putting his family, I mean, they're on the road for 8 months, you know, and his kids are young. I think all his kids are like under 3 or 4. And they've got this, they do a daily or a weekly vlog, and you can track what they're doing. It's a beautiful thing. And it's just, I think, relevant to what you're saying. And I'm just trying to keep it on a positive note, man. There are people out there that are doing it, you know, and I think we all can do our part, because it's beautiful what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to have that balance, you know, of, you know, like, like the way I see things currently is, yeah, we are in a destructive phase, but there's the planet Earth is a master of balance, an absolute master of balance, and so we live within that. So, but we're going through, in my opinion, a fluctuation. So yeah, there's destruction, there's destructive waves and chaotic waves moving through people, and there's also creative, productive waves moving through people as well. And but again, which one are we focusing on? It just depends.
And Edward, I'm starting to suspect that whichever one you focus on is what you're going to get.
Goddamn right.
I'm really seeing that in a lot of ways, and it's easier said than done. Even if you start to realize that, you really got to be conscious of what you're focusing on, what you're pulling in.
Well, and in my journey, I've had to go through a lot of the tough lessons of understanding the difference between my thoughts and someone else's thoughts,
right?
And being able to differentiate between the two, and that's a real tough one. And I went through, a rough experience of what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, apparently I needed the rough version. Apparently,
you weren't picking up the subtleties, right?
Yeah, some lessons I need to learn the hard way.
Yeah, you and me both, dude. I get it.
Yeah, man, and that's an ongoing difficult task of maintenance. That's a constant maintenance. It's like having cats and a litter box. You have to continually clean that thing out, and the mind is the same way. And so, it becomes a process of, okay, if I'm upset, if I'm angry, if I'm this, if I'm that, is that because of my thoughts, or am I being influenced by someone else who is trying to control how I feel? It becomes a process of being able to figure out the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And then what to do about it, then you're going to do something about it, So that's a big deal to me. That's a really big deal to me, especially in an era where there is mass manipulation, mass influence over people's minds and emotions. And which can lead to, unfortunately, mass hysteria.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm bringing it up and how it relates to the Vimana thing is that in the Vimana experience, in the granting and this species of individual recognizing something in another species of individual and saying, "Oh, there's so much potential here. And let's bring it up."
Yeah.
And if somebody's in a state of fear, then their creativity is being pushed through a fear channel, and they can create things to reflect how they're feeling, And so it's like, well, which one do I? How do I want to channel this energy? I need to be in control of that. It's like in remote viewing. The phrase above the door of the entrance door let's say you're going into the temple of remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
The phrase at the top of the door says, "The viewer is always in control."
Mm-hmm.
That's the phrase at the top of the door.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the viewer is always in control, and that's a big that's, in my opinion, a big learning lesson in the development of the human. You know, and I mean, just imagine if Elvis never went into that studio and recorded a little record for his mom's birthday called "That's All Right, Mama."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
imagine if that recording studio was never built.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and he was just like, "Oh well, I guess I'll just be a truck driver."
Yeah.
And we, you know, all of that amazing singing, you know,
And everything that came as a result of it.
it just never would have came into being,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And that would have been a tragedy, man.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I love that music. I listen to Elvis and I want to cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it is gospel, and you know, just, you know, he really pulls it
Yeah.
from deep. And just imagine if that didn't happen, that would have totally sucked. You know,
It's a lot to
that's what I'm talking about.
lot to think about, Edward. And I think you've put out some very wise words, and words of hope. And you know, I needed to have this conversation tonight, and it's always great. I always feel grounded after I speak with you. You fill things in, and what I find in your data at its core is everything's okay, you know, and there's good things out there, and there's support out there, and there's knowledge out there to be gained, and we have a lot more choice than we sometimes remember in choosing which direction we're going to go into, and I thank you for that. It's always been you know, a joy to speak with you. So we're close to the end of our time here. Is there any final thoughts? I know we kind of just did final thoughts, but any final thoughts? Anything else you want to throw out there for our listeners?
It reminded me of I'm a big fan of a guy named John Lilly.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that invented the float tank. He
Right.
was interviewed a long time ago by Jeffrey Mishlove. You may know Jeffrey Mishlove. Thinking Aloud is his show.
Okay.
And this was a long time ago, probably early mid '80s, and Jeffrey Mishlove was a big fan of John Lilly's work. He read all of his books, and he was saying, in this book you had this, and you had all these different levels of the mind and all these different things. And he says, he said, do you still see it that way, or have you added more levels of the mind? And John Lilly just goes, he says, no. I said, I scrapped all of that, man. He said, he said, there's infinities in the mind.
Right.
It's too big, man, you know?
Right.
And I just loved it when he said that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Get rid of your mental constructs, man. There's infinities in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Infinities, you know?
And I think that ties into, there's multiple routes you can take to get to a specific destination.
So many, man.
Yeah.
So many creative ways to solve a problem. I mean, I talk about this with my wife now. There's a lot of problems in the world, but there are so many potential solutions, and there are so many human minds that are cranking out solutions more than ever, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a scary time, and it's an incredibly hopeful, creative time as well. And beyond that, there's infinities in the mind, you know.
Yeah. Well said, Edward. It's an excellent quote to end things on. So, real quick, why don't you give everybody where they can find you again?
Well, my YouTube is my name, Edward Reardon, and then you can find myself and you and Dick Allgaier and Daz Smith and the fellows over at Crypto Viewing, where we do just awesome stuff there. And like I like to say, with my YouTube stuff, I always say more to come. But with the Crypto Viewing group, I like to say the best is yet to come.
Yeah, you got that right, buddy.
I really, really feel that. So much amazing. There's so much potential.
Yeah.
In the group, and I can't wait to just continually crack it open and let it pour out and just unleash the potential.
We're just getting awesome. Started. We really are just getting started.
Warmed up.
The team is,
the best is yet to come.
We've gelled, but we're still growing. We haven't hit any plateaus or anything. We're still growing and improving our methods and the targets that we're everything. Yeah. It's just getting better and better. And it's a great, before I started working with remote viewers, I always said, you have your news, you have your experience, you have your research. Why not throw remote viewing data into your overall consumption of information and use it as part of your analytical process? And what we do at Crypto Viewing, we do that. We do the remote viewing, the analysis, the background information, and it's a great source of information for people out there. If you want to know more, we're not just looking at cryptocurrencies, but we're also looking at how that's going to impact the world, not just present day, but also moving forward in the future. Infrastructure, society, governments, politics, economy, so many different aspects that tie into a currency. So just to piggyback on the plug, cryptoviewing.com or patreon.com/cryptoviewing. Can't plug it enough with what they're doing. Such talented people that we're working with. So well, on
best is yet to come.
Absolutely, well said, Edward. And on that high note, then let's go ahead and close this out. Edward, just hold the line for a minute. But again, I want to say thank you once again for gracing me on this show. It's been a true honor, my friend.
Oh, the honor and pleasure is mine, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
I will take your words and say many more to come.
Many more, man. Awesome.
Thank you. And there you have it, Truth Seekers. He has done it again. Edward Reardon has certainly moved me. I'm so thankful every opportunity that I have to speak with him and get him on the show and to share what he brings. I think is such a gift to really to the world. And he's such a positive guy. And I feel grounded. I said at the beginning of the show, I feel grounded after talking to him. And I hope that you do too. And I look forward to what else we have out there. And just looking at the data that he brought back, a lot of things come to mind that do parallel some of the things that we talk about here. And he talked about the potential that was seen in what seems like humanity and the influencing that was done to help bring that potential out. And there's several creation or intervention myths that are out there that parallel what the data that Edward brought back. I think that gives more credibility and credence that there was a higher or a more advanced civilization that did have a hand in our evolution. And in this instance, this seems to be a positive influence, and that gives me hope that there are benevolent forces that are out there that are lending a hand to us in this. I know we constantly hear about the scary stuff and the negative stuff and the enslavement stuff, and but let's put this in our minds and our hearts as well, is that there is good out there, just like there's good here on this planet, just like we see mankind and people going out and standing up for animals, for the a race or of a species that they see as in need of help. As above, so below. I now have hope that there's races out there or species or civilizations out there that see us and are lending a hand to help us, even in the face of so much negativity that we're seeing. A lot of pieces come together with that. So, look, we've talked for quite a bit. We're at about an hour and 20 minutes now. Be sure to check out Edward's work. You can find him on YouTube. I'll definitely have the links in the show notes. I'll have the links in the newsletter as well. You can subscribe to that at sixcentsmedia.net. And please don't forget to check out my book, I Am Human, Food for the Archons, Humanity's Psychic Connection, Simulated Realities, Parallel Worlds, and the Manipulation of Mankind. It's available on Amazon and at sixcentsmedia.net. While you're at sixcentsmedia.net, please take a swing over to the affirmation spot with Ray Davis. You want some more positivity with his daily affirmations of helping to uplift your spirits and remind you that you are certainly capable of achieving your goals and making your dreams a reality. Ray is a fountain of positivity and inspiration. I need to get him back on the show as well. Check out the Crypto Viewing team, cryptoviewing.com, patreon.com/cryptoviewing. Can't stress it enough. We need to understand where we are in this world to understand where we're going, and the analysis coming out of Crypto Viewing every single week on that platform, I think, is essential for us to be aware of. Only so much we can get into on this platform and on the YouTube channels. Really, the Patreon is where it's at with what we're putting out and what we can put out for various reasons. Check out Dick Allgire's YouTube channel. I'll have that link at sixcentsmedia.net in the show notes as well. And check out the work of Daz Smith at remoteviewed.com. If you want to know something about remote viewing, go look at Daz's page, remoteviewed.com. Books, articles, a lot of open source stuff, a lot of free stuff. He's got an archive of everything you need to know about remote viewing. That's the place to go. And if you like what you see there, be sure to contribute as well to his donate page. Same with Edward on his Patreon page. Check that out as well. I know I'm giving a lot of plugs here, but there's some really good work coming out, and it's worth an investment in your time at a minimum, I think. So, all right, my friends, that's all the time I have here. Thank you so much for continuing to tune in each and every week. Tell your friends. I'm Dennis Nappy II. This has been another episode of the Seiker Podcast with Sixth Sense Media, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I encourage you to be that change. Never stop questioning. Keep an open mind, and let your intuition be your guide. Thanks for listening.